Welcome to Counter Narrative News, bringing you daily news today on Tuesday, the 31st of January, 2023. In the USA, General Mike Minihan, who commands the Air Mobility Command of over 100,000 troops, has stated that in his consideration, the USA will be at war with China in 2025 over the controversy of the island breakaway nation of Taiwan. Although the Pentagon and senior Democratic Party spokesperson have pushed back on this statement, it is nevertheless representative of some of the more quote-unquote hawkish elements of the Republican Party. Indeed, it was reported towards the last couple of months of former President Trump's rule that he ordered a bombing of China, which apparently his senior military refused to carry out. General Minihan's comments about a possible war with China in 2025 indicate an interesting strategic approach by Washington vis-a-vis Beijing, inasmuch they are piling on the pressure and developing anxiety and splits in the Chinese leadership, according to how the Chinese leadership want to navigate the situation going forward. The Chinese leadership, like the Iranian leadership and other states' leadership, are split between, on the one hand, going towards a more confrontational approach under the leadership and junior partnership with Putin and Moscow and the Russian example, or pulling back from that and trying to engage with the United States in an approach of trying to calm down tensions and to achieve some economic and political gains out of that. Going to Italy and Libya, the current leadership of Italy, which is far-right Meloni, has recently visited Libya to conclude an $8 billion oil deal with the Tripoli junta. Libya is split between two juntas, one in Benghazi and one in Tripoli. The head of the oil ministry, however, opposes and disagrees with this decision and argues that he was not consulted. If we look at the situation with Italy as the former colonizer of Libya, last year, Libya delivered 2.6 billion cubic meters of oil to Italy. Compare this to the years before the NATO destruction of Libya, but that's before the late summer of 2011, and the annual delivery of oil to Italy by Libya was more than 8 billion cubic meters. As stated, Italy is the former colonizer of Libya. Under fascist dictator Mussolini, he conducted one of the most brutal colonial occupations of any on the planet against the Libyan people, and one would signpost people to watch the excellent documentary by Mustafa Akkad called Umar Mukhtar, The Lion of the Desert, which by the by was funded in most part by Muammar Gaddafi, the former socialist, Pan-Africanist and Pan-Arab leader of Libya. In the deal that Meloni has struck with the Tripoli junta in Libya, conditional on that deal is that the junta there tries to lessen the migration flow of Asians and Africans through the people trafficking route of Libya and in the Mediterranean Sea. What this means is basically that more migrants trying to cross the sea will be abducted, abused, tortured, raped and killed by the former death squads, who are now the racketeers of the people trafficking and the quote-unquote policing of the migration flows. Going to the Russian leadership, Vladimir Putin has made some rather, what many would argue, laughable comments in his apparent opposition to Islamophobia. That's anti-racist, anti-Muslim racism. This is most likely in accordance to comments in support of President Erdogan, who's kicking up a very big fuss in relation to his relations with Sweden and a recent protest, a disgusting protest has to be said, that whereby some racist in Sweden burnt the Quran, which is the most holy book for Muslims in the religion of Islam. Putin is a well-known racist and Islamophobe, and frankly, anywhere you find anyone with any anti-racist Muslim beliefs, they're likely to be a supporter of Vladimir Putin. Similarly, but in slightly different hypocritical and strange comments from the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, on a recent visit in Eritrea, argues that, quote-unquote, we respect the sovereignty of independent nations at the United Nations. End of quote. This is very strange comments, considering that the vast majority of member states of the UN are opposing the illegal supremacist conflict that Russia is imposing through its invasion, collective punishment against civilians, and its colonial occupations in Ukraine. Lavrov is clearly trying to curry favor with Eritrea and other allied East African states. Eritrea, for its part, has just recently concluded its involvement in a very bloody ethnic war in the Tigray region in alliance with the Ethiopian leadership in Addis Ababa. Now going over to Peru, right-wing president who's very much got her back against the wall against the rising radical protest movement, of which she's killed nearly 70 off, has brought the military and the army onto the streets across Peru to try and unblock the roadblocks that the protesters have set up in their protest in defense partly of former leftist President Castillo. The entire nation is blockaded by the protest movement, which actually gives an example to many other people across the world that if a people are determined through oppression and exploitation, if they have the consciousness and the organization and they're determined enough, they can bring the whole country to a standstill. And that's what's happened in Peru. The Peruvian government is very isolated in the region. They have pulled their ambassador from Honduras after Honduras government's critical remarks against the repression in Peru. The Mexican president has denounced the repression in Peru, as has the Argentinian president, the Venezuelan president, and the Bolivian leadership and government as well. On this day, that's the 31st of January in 1919, striking workers in Glasgow in Scotland conducted a very intense class struggle, leading the Secretary of State at the time to denounce it as a Bolshevik uprising. At a very similar time, just before this strike by Glaswegian workers, there was a radical movement of opposing weapons being sent by the global imperialist coalition against the new Bolshevik revolution in Russia. Also on the 30th of January in 1972, the British Army occupation of the 6 counties of Ireland, which was introduced by a Labour government in the late 60s. But on 30th of January 1972, they conducted what's infamously called the Bloody Sunday Massacre. The Bloody Sunday Massacre happened in response to a radical protest march and movement of the occupied Irish people for their human and political rights. This was met by a massacre by the British Army in which 14 people were killed, including very young people, and the struggle for justice around that continues to hold the British state and the army and those soldiers directly responsible to account and to be brought to justice. Many Irish Republicans argue there is no such thing as quote-unquote British justice, and justice is only meted out by a revolutionary and insurgent people. Many thanks for listening to Daily News from Counter Narrative News. We're really pleased to announce that we have now 100 subscribers within a month of our launch. Please do encourage your friends and contacts through your social media and by other means to subscribe. Many thanks to those who have already subscribed. Please comment to like, comment and share. Counter Narrative News is the only independent daily news and analysis platform that is not beholden to any state in the world or funder, and seeks to report and analyze solely through loyalty and in the interest of the global oppressed against capitalism, colonialism and white supremacy. Thank you.